In a quiet village tucked between the hills, an old man named Yusef lived alone. He was a silent man, kept to himself, never married, rarely spoke. When he died, no one claimed his body, and the villagers buried him quickly in the rocky graveyard behind the olive trees. They buried him on the third day after he passed, just as the sun was beginning to fall behind the hills. The imam recited the prayers, the gravedigger covered the wooden box with dry soil, and all went home. That night, strange things began. At dawn, a woman sweeping her doorstep heard footsteps, slow, heavy, dragging steps, outside her house. She thought it was a drunkard, but when she looked out, the street was empty, only dust. On the second night, a child cried, saying there was someone knocking on their window. His father dismissed it, just the wind. But the boy kept whispering, "He has no eyes." By the third night, several villagers reported hearing the same thing. Footsteps, always after the call to morning prayer, always slow, always coming from the graveyard road. They called the gravedigger, an old man with shaky hands. He said nothing, only looked at the ground for a long time. Then he confessed the body had been cold, but soft. Too soft. It hadn't stiffened. He'd buried it anyway. By the fifth night, a woman went missing. Her door was open, her bed untouched. No signs of struggle, but a line of wet footprints led from her doorstep toward the hills. Human-shaped, but wrong, as if the toes bent backwards. The imam ordered prayers, fasts, and cleansing rituals, but nothing stopped it. Every few days, someone disappeared, always after a night when the footsteps returned. Some say Yusef was cursed. Others whisper he made a pact before he died. But no one dares go to the graveyard now, not after what the shepherd boy found there one misty morning. Yusef's grave was empty. The wooden box had burst open from the inside, and on the cracked stone someone, or something, had carved 3 words in deep, jagged letters: "I'm not done." After the shepherd boy found the grave empty, fear gripped the village like frost gripping dry earth. Doors were bolted before sunset. Children were kept silent. No one walked the graveyard road, not even in daylight. But the footsteps returned, always just before dawn, always stopping at a different door, and one by one, people disappeared. No blood, no screams, just a quiet absence. Then one night, the footsteps stopped outside the blacksmith's house. Inside, Khalid, the blacksmith, waited with a loaded hunting rifle. He'd lost his brother the week before, found nothing but his shoes in the field. Khalid was not a man of superstition. He believed in bullets. So when the dragging steps reached his door, he didn't flinch. He opened the door slowly. No one was there, only the wind. But just as he turned to close it, he saw something. At the far end of the street, under the flickering oil lamp, a figure stood. Tall, thin, bent slightly to one side. Its skin hung wrong, pale and wrinkled like damp cloth. And it watched. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. But Khalid felt the air thicken around him, heavy and foul, like grave dirt. Then the oil lamp died. And so did Khalid. They found his house locked from the inside. No sign of struggle, no broken glass. But there was one thing left behind, a long, rusted nail, buried deep into the wooden floor near his bed, the same kind they use in coffins. Now, some of the villagers believe that Yusef, the corpse, wasn't just walking. He was building something, coming back, piece by piece, with every soul he took. And those who vanish, they don't just die, they walk behind him, but no one sees them until it's too late. Weeks passed. The village was no longer a place of whispers. it had become a place of silence. The kind of silence that settles deep into the bones, the kind that listens. They no longer rang the call to prayer. The imam had vanished. The school was abandoned. The market square grew weeds. Windows were covered with cloth, not for sunlight, but so no one could see out. Because now, it wasn't just the footsteps. It was the knocking. Every third night, at the same hour just before dawn, came a slow, steady knock. 3 times, always on a different house, always followed by silence. And by morning, someone was gone. Layla, the herbalist's daughter, was the first to fight back. She began keeping notes, watching the shadows, counting the hours. She swore she saw shapes behind her bedroom wall, shadows that didn't match the angle of the sun. Once she placed her ear to the plaster. She heard breathing from inside the wall. One night she stayed awake with a candle and a small dagger. The knocking came, not on her door, but from inside her wall. 3 slow knocks. She didn't scream. She pushed the bed aside, peeled away the cracked plaster with her blade, and found something behind it. Flesh, rotten, pressed against the wall, still moving as if someone or something was trapped inside, pushing forward gently, waiting to be let out. She dropped the candle. Flames leapt, smoke rose. The neighbors rushed in, doused the fire. They found Layla unconscious, burned hands, wide eyes, mute. But the wall was untouched. No burn, no crack, no proof. Just her dagger, bent into a curve, like it had hit bone beneath the plaster. Since that night, the knocking stopped. But not because it was over. Now, the villagers say, it doesn't knock anymore. It doesn't ask permission. It's already inside. And if you listen too long to the silence, you might hear breathing from the other side of your wall. Layla never spoke again. She sat in the corner of her family's burned room, hands wrapped in cloth, her eyes fixed on the wall where no one else saw anything. But she drew, with charcoal, with ash, with what remained of burned wood. She drew. First, it was symbols, circles, eyes, figures with twisted legs and mouths too wide. Then faces, not hers, not her parents', but faces the villagers recognized, the missing ones. One drawing in particular shook her mother to the core, her brother, Salem, who'd vanished 2 weeks earlier, drawn exactly as he was, but with no lips, just black gaps. And behind him, a tall man with no face, just stretched skin and a cracked rib showing through his chest. Layla's mother tore the picture, burned it, but the next day it was back on the wall, redrawn, exactly the same, and this time the faceless man was closer. That same night, in the far corner of the village, an old man named Hafez was woken by a sound inside his house. Not footsteps, breathing, heavy, wet just behind his door. He lit a candle and whispered a prayer, but before he could reach the handle, the door creaked open on its own. There was nothing there, only darkness, and the faint smell of damp wood, mold, and something else, decay. As he stepped forward, the candle flickered violently, then went out. The next morning, his house was empty, but scratched into the wooden floor were words no one wanted to read. She sees what you won't. Layla's drawings grew darker. Now, every morning, there was a new one. Each showed the village from above, but each time one less house was drawn, one less family, until only a few homes remained sketched in charcoal, and in the middle of them all, at the center of every drawing, a deep black circle, no explanation, no label, just darkness. The elders finally spoke. They said this had happened once before, long ago, when the village was first built. They said a man had died unjustly, buried in anger, forgotten in silence. And silence, when it grows too deep, starts to echo. But no one listened, because now when the villagers sleep, they don't dream, they see. The corridor, the wall, the thin, rotting fingers pressing through the cracks. Only 5 homes remained, and each night one candle went out and never lit again. Layla no longer ate. She didn't blink. She only drew. On the 5th morning, her final drawing appeared. It was different. No more faces, no houses, just the circle, thick, black, endless. And in the center, a hole, smudged so deep into the paper it had torn through. That night, the remaining villagers gathered in silence. They stood around Layla's home, silent as graves, because they had all seen the same dream. A tunnel under the village, made of bone and wet stone, and the sound of shovels. Digging up. An old woman, the midwife, whispered what everyone feared. "He's not taking people. He's collecting them." The earth began to tremble, not like an earthquake, but like something pushing upward. The ground behind Layla's house cracked. A circle of soil turned darker, sunken. And from that circle came a voice. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry. It was cold, like earth that's never seen light. It said, "Finish what you buried." Then they came, not from the woods, from the ground. Hands, dozens, twisted, pale, reaching, pulling up bodies with hollow eyes and slack jaws. They walked like puppets, but their mouths moved. They whispered names. And when someone heard their own name whispered, they couldn't move, couldn't speak. They just walked into the circle, one by one, until only Layla remained. She stood at the center of the broken village, her hands burned, her eyes blank. She walked toward the hole. The circle pulsed, the ground opened wider. But before she stepped in, she dropped her final drawing. It fluttered to the floor, half buried in dust, and on it, written in shaking charcoal strokes, "He walks because we looked away. He rises because we stayed silent. But he ends where the light returns." Then she disappeared into the earth. Since then, the village is empty. But if you ever pass through, don't stop. Don't ask. And never follow the footprints that lead away from the last house standing. Because the corpse doesn't just walk now. He waits. There is no surface anymore. Only down. Only dark. Only silence that presses on your ribs like wet cloth. And in that silence, Layla opened her eyes. She wasn't dead, not fully. She was lying in a tunnel, not stone, not dirt, flesh. The walls pulsed. Veins ran through them like roots. The air was thick, not with smoke, but with breath. A breath that came from everywhere. In front of her stood the thing that was once Yusef. But it wasn't him anymore. Its bones were wrapped in others. Its legs made of limbs stolen from the villagers. Its face stitched with mouths, whispering all at once. And all of them spoke her name. Layla. She could not move. Behind her, others stood. Faces she knew, eyes she didn't recognize. Their mouths hung open, but their feet walked. Then the truth came, not in words, but in memory. This place was never cursed. It was fed by silence. By the first time, a man was buried unjustly, alone, with no prayer and no name. Every time the village let pain go unspoken, a brick was laid in this tunnel. Every secret, every shame, built a body that waited. And when it was ready, it rose, not to kill, but to remind. "You are not free of me," it said. "You are made of me." Layla stood in the tunnel, and for the first time she screamed. The scream echoed, cut through the flesh walls, burned the breath. The faces began to fade, the mouths stopped. She reached into her pocket and pulled one final item her mother gave her long ago, a small mirror. She held it up to the creature, and every stitched mouth whispered one word: mercy. Then silence, real silence, the kind that doesn't breathe. Layla woke alone, under the tree behind her house. The village was gone, not destroyed. Gone. Only soil, only wind, no houses, no names, no drawings, as if the place had never existed, except for the mirror in her hand, still cracked, still cold, and behind her reflection, a shape, still watching, still waiting. Layla lived, but no one in the village remembered her. No one remembered the village. No one remembered its name, as if it had never existed. Layla tried to speak. She traveled to cities. She wrote what she saw. She drew everything. But the drawings vanished from her notebooks, and the words erased themselves whenever she looked. When she took a photo of the mirror she saved, her phone crashed. Mirrors around her began to reflect something else. Not her image, but her shadow. And the shadow moved when she did not. One night she dreamed again. The village, the circle, the whole. But this time she was not outside looking in. She was beneath the earth, and her hands were not her own. They were longer, thinner, pulsing. She woke to find black marks on her hands, not burns, not wounds, but carvings, as if the earth itself had etched them onto her skin. In the center of her right palm, a black dot, pulsing slowly, as if something was growing inside her. She realized the truth. She did not leave the circle. The circle left with her. What was buried beneath the earth did not need someone to run from it. It needed someone to carry it. And the creature was looking for a root. And Layla was fertile soil. The cities around her started to catch a strange silence. In every neighborhood, one window would close forever. Then a family would disappear. Then a mirror would shatter. Then the dreams would begin. People didn't name it, because the name was gone. But they knew it when it walked behind them, just before dawn, when they heard 3 steps, 3 whispers, and 3 words. I remember you. The shadows grew longer each day. Layla no longer knew where she ended, and the darkness began. Mirrors shattered around her, reflections fractured into twisted shapes. One night, she stood before a cracked mirror, holding it tight. The shadow moved behind her, no longer silent. It whispered, "You cannot escape what you carry." She turned slowly. The face staring back was not hers. It was a patchwork of every lost soul, eyes empty, mouths sewn shut. Yet it spoke without sound. Then the mirror shattered, and with it the last thread between the world above and the darkness below broke. The village reappeared, not in the living world, but beneath the earth, in a place where time was frozen, where the lost walked endlessly, and Layla joined them. The seed had taken root. Outside, people still hear the footsteps. 3 slow steps, 3 whispers, 3 words. I remember you. And somewhere beneath the ground, the corpse still walks, waiting, watching, hungry.